So maybe I should take this seriously. I want to really help others. I always try to be that person to give them value, no matter what it is. You have to have a different mindset of this. And in my case, the mindset is
So it's always great to see what you're up to. So for people who somehow don't know, I think all the variety performers, magician types will kind of know who you are. But for the people in different worlds, do you want to give your 30-second version of what you are up to and what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Caroline Ravn. I've been doing magic for the past 30 years, but I'm obviously only 28 years old, so that was my best trick so far. No, but I learned magic from my grandpa when I was very young. I was only 3 years old when he started teaching me the arts of magic. And so he was a magician and my dad a politician, so lying on the job was always encouraged. And ever since, I've been doing magic in one way or another, really. I studied theology for 5.5 years before I sold my soul to Satan for card tricks, and here we are now. But I do mainly comedy magic for corporate shows and like big corporations. I do a lot of cruise ships. I do a lot of social media, and I just released a book for entertainers about the business side of show business.
Amazing. I think you might have gotten that into 30 seconds, which is nearly impossible, I know. So
yeah, I also left out. I left out that I am a twin mother and I have a dog and, the important stuff. I left out.
Yeah. Just card tricks. That's the most important, really.
I got card tricks, Satan, my grandpa. I'm good.
There you go. Politicians lying.
Yeah.
Having a family member show tricks, that's something that like kind of everyone has at some level, usually not a professional, but most people don't go and then say, oh, I want to be a magician after seeing a family member do magic or something like that. What do you think it was for you that what was that spark to kind of like kick this off? What do you think that was that spark where you were like, oh, I saw that and now I want to like fully invest in this? Because it's not easy. Because I remember when I was a kid, I got a magic book and I was actually kind of bummed because I was like, oh, it's not real. I have to like learn how to do this thing. And I think that's why I kind of went into juggling more, because it was like, oh, what you see is what you get. And that kind of felt more appealing to me. What was that when your small child brain that was like, oh, I love this? And then you have to learn that like, oh, it's not real. I have to like do hard things, but then it's still worth it because, the audience gets to experience that. Any thoughts on that?
A lot of thoughts on that. My two major things that I'm thinking is one, I was a very bullied child, so I didn't really have a space, like an outlet for being creative or being seen or anything like that. So when my grandpa took me aside to do a trick for me or teach me something, I felt very special and very seen. And experiencing magic from a child's perspective, everything becomes so much bigger. Everything becomes wonder is probably the best word for this. So there's that part. And also the fact that he didn't really teach me the tricks, but he would show me a trick over and over and over, and he would just pass me the stuff and I could create it myself. Like he would give me a way of being creative without telling me how to do it, rather than this is what it's supposed to look like. So he might have showed me how to vanish a coin or how to do a double lift or whatever it was, but there was never a teaching in a pattern. He would instead just hand it over to me and I would create the stuff that he wanted me to create, I guess. So I guess he pushed me in the right direction instead of just, here is the manual for you to do this.
I think magic is unique because if you're doing some other sort of creative thing, performance thing, you pretty instantly can, like if you play a drum, like when I was a kid, I played drums, and you can kind of like instantly like do something. It's not, people are like, oh, that's not that good, but they're like, oh, well, they're learning. Magic, there's like a threshold, like it either worked or it didn't. Like people are like, oh, well, you're pretending that it was good for like the little kid that shows it. So once you started to then do that, what was the moment when you realized then seeing the audience respond to something that worked? What was that first moment? Do you remember the first moment or first kind of like era of that happening where you're like, oh, they're not just being nice to me. I'm like, I did something that was actually good.
Yeah, it was my first ever paid show. It was horrific and great at the same time. Different parts of the night, of course. But So I used to work in church for a long time, and my first clients came from the church. So there was this one guy who was organizing a party. I think he was having like a 50s or 60s birthday party. And he asked me to come, first ever paid gig. And he had hired this Swedish ukulele orchestra. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll just, appear a ukulele thing. It would be great. And I had no idea how to do this because, it was hard and it was big and it was, whatever. And I remember doing like an appearing ukulele as a first part of that evening. And everybody was like, yep. And then later I did the show that I had rehearsed. Keyword here, rehearsed. So I did the show. And then after the show, the MC said, this is Caroline Ravn. Remember where you saw her first. So that was like, so many things happened during those hours. Like I felt like shit. I was terrible. And then like killing myself really for that thing that I just did. And then just a couple of hours later, I felt like I was on the top of the world because this is really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on a stage and get people and like excited and feel this wonder and be like, what just happened? And I noticed in that crowd, there were no kids. Like it was only adults. And I had done some kid tricks and it still worked. Like I did the coloring magic book thing. Like they would toss colors into the book. I was doing the full on kids party pattern because I didn't know better. Nobody told me how to do this. So I did that. And afterwards, I was like so proud and so ashamed at the same time. But I think it was something that happened in that moment where I'm like, okay, if I want to do this seriously, I have to take this seriously. I have to really sit down and create this show that I will be proud of and say no to all of the other things that I do not want to do, things that do not make me happy. And kids shows never made me happy. So I cut that out right away. And then, doing tricks outside, at festivals and busking, all of that. I was like, nope, doesn't make me happy. So I removed it. So very early on, I knew that I wanted to be a comedy entertainer for the corporate market. So I was very intentional, especially when it came to my networking with the right people. I always made sure it was people who are either like marketing directors or HR or executive assistants or people like that in that position, that they would have the capacity or even expected to provide something like me on a stage. So it's very easy now to say like, oh, that was a smart move. But it wasn't very easy in that moment because when you are starting out as an entertainer, you kind of have to say yes to everything to make it work financially. So it was a very hard decision in that regard. Like I'm turning down so much money because getting the kid shows and getting the family shows and festivals is a little bit easier than coming from nothing and saying that I want to be the magician at your 2,000 people Christmas party because you need the experience, But it was a fun little exercise to do. And I guess I got there. 10 years later.
Yeah, a couple things on that. I think I feel like, I remember talking to you out when we were out in LA, and I remember just like this thing of you having such strategic thinking that's often rare in entertainers and creative people in general, probably especially magicians. And one thing that I kind of always respected you in a way, it was, I remember you talking about how many people you were working with, like building a team in a way, like of working with like a manager or bringing on people to help you. And now thinking about it in a strategic way of cutting out the types of jobs and gigs that you didn't want to do. It's so hard to say like, oh, I could go make money and do gigs and doing these like, quote, easier to book, a family show or something like that. But drawing the line and kind of acting like a professional, like acting like a business, like, okay, I'm going to hire a person to help me do this. And then I'm going to turn down these gigs that are like rolling in and leverage everything out. And really, it's like strategic business thinking that so many people don't have. You can tell them like, hey, you should stop doing that and do the thing that you want. And then the answer is, well, yeah, but, and they have some line of excuses. So talk about that. Like, how do you push through that? Because as you said, it's hard and it's easy for us all to stick with like what we know and the easy things. So what's your like how do you do that? How, like, what's your if a tip to somebody who's like, yeah, I see you doing your, like, what you actually want to be doing, but I just don't know how to get there. I get it. Like, I should stop doing the things that I don't want to do, but tactically, how do I do that? So do you have any thoughts on that, like mindset shifts that you were able to say, like, yeah, this might give me a little bit of a hit in the short term, but it's building my long-term business?
Two things I want to say. The first thing is that when you are starting to turn down work, it means that you're turning down money, which means that you have to lower your own costs, because otherwise you're going to be burning basically on both ends. So that would be my first recommendation. If you are trying to build an entertainment business, if you're a juggler, singer, magician, whatever you are, make sure you have as low cost as you possibly can have. Like if you have a mortgage and you have 5 kids and whatever, I'm sure that's going to be hard, but maybe there's a way for you to like pull down in hours from your real job that you have, like real job that you have right now, or maybe your wife can take on more hours or whatever it is. But make sure that you can cover the costs in the same time you're pursuing this thing that you're pursuing. And if you want to pursue magic or singing or whatever it is, you have to make sure you're actually telling people that they can hire you for money. So that's the one thing that I see a lot of entertainers missing out on. They're like sitting in their little chamber thinking to themselves, I'm so great, a manager is going to find me, or I'm so great, the gigs are just going to roll in. But that's not going to happen. It might happen if you're already famous, that people are going to reach out to you because you're famous. But most people are not. Most people are struggling entertainers who just want to make a living. And so take every opportunity that you can to tell people that you are an entertainer for hire. So let's take a normal example from my own life right now. I have 2 kids. They're 2.5 years old. I take them to the park, not every day, but most days. And they're twins. So people will come up to me and be like, oh my God, you're handling twins by yourself. And I always say something like, yeah, but you should see my partner. He takes them a lot because I'm actually an internationally traveling entertainer. And they're like, oh, so you're a singer. Now, no, I actually do magic for a living. And then we get into a conversation of what is that really like? Oh, you do cruise ships. You do this. Oh, you've been to Las Vegas. Oh, you know David Copperfield. Oh, you know this person. Whatever it is. They get so interested in the life that I live, and I kind of leave them wanting more in that conversation, and I start asking questions about them. So, okay, so what do you do? Oh, you work there. Oh, that's interesting. How long have you been there? Oh, have you ever hired like professional entertainers before to like a show? Have you seen any entertainers at a Christmas party or whatever it is? And give them a reason to start thinking about the fact that they can actually bring you in instead of you saying, oh, I could do your Christmas party. So a recent example of something like this that happened was I was creating like a bunch of different social media clips. And I had this joke trick where I held up a cookie in front of the camera and I took my hand in front of it. And then as I covered the cookie with my hand, I put it in my mouth and then it's gone, looks amazing, looks really funny. So I did that. And then on a flight, I met this woman who worked as a marketing director for a chips company. So a couple of days later, I did the same thing on LinkedIn, tagging her in it. And she was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You have to come to our party. Because there's like always this opportunity if you just see it. Like you can't just be like, oh, I need the gig, I need the gig, I need the gig. Because then you're not going to get it. So you have to have a different mindset of this. And in my case, the mindset is, how can I lead with value? How can I provide something for them that they've never seen before? Like she had never seen a chip vanish in a joke like that. She loved it. Of course she did. And people at the park, like how can I ignite this idea for them that they could also bring in laughter and amazement and wonder and fantasticness to an event? And that is basically just by asking the right questions. And what those right questions are, I can't really tell you because it all depends on the chemistry with that person. And you just have to be super interesting in the beginning. Like, of course, it's interesting to say that you're an entertainer. Like, oh my God, who do you know in the industry? Do you know this person? Or have you been to Las Vegas? Or whatever it is. And they're always going to have these questions where you can have the opportunity of giving more value and giving ideas to them, because it's more likely for you to get a gig if they feel like it was their idea.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, at 100%, because so many entertainers, creative people are like desperate for the gig, and that's a fine line of like going, I'm going to go out and tell everybody what I do and try to get a gig, versus what you said
Yeah.
is providing that value and then thinking about creative ways to like, oh, I'm going to go home and then create something that's targeted to them. So you mentioned that you have a book that helps entertainers of all types think about stuff like this. What do you think on that, kind of circling back into that side of things? What do you think has been the inspiration for you to want to help other entertainers after you've kind of like realized that you are good at doing these types of things? Some people would say, okay, I'm really good at this. I'm going to like keep this all to myself so I book more gigs. What's that? What do you get out of that as far as helping other people doing things like, and touch on, you also mentioned you have the book club that is a resource for people to learn. So what's that inspiration for you to like actually want to go out and be helpful? Because that's, for me, has been kind of the same. I've honestly really been finding that that's what I kind of enjoy even more than going out and making stuff and booking myself, is doing the podcast that has 120 episodes or something now, and really like learning from other people and then sharing the ways that they were able to create it. So I get so much out of that. How's that been for you as far as being out and just like sharing the knowledge and wisdom that you've learned?
So when I started again, because I had a little bit of a break from magic for a little bit, I say a little bit, but it was 15 years of not actually performing any tricks. It was a long time. I kind of just stumbled upon Tom Stone, who became my mentor in magic for a while. And I asked him, he flew down to the south of Sweden where I lived. I spent his own money to come and help this girl out that he didn't know. And I asked him what he wanted in return. This is 10 plus years ago, 10 and a half years ago. And he says, whenever you get the opportunity to help somebody else, I want you to do so. And he didn't know anything about the business side, and because he's not really a performing magician that way. And whenever I reached out to other performers here in Sweden, like how do you book a gig? How do you write a contract? All of this stuff. Everybody was just giving me the cold shoulder. And when I did my first tour, even some people came up to me and be like, oh, you can never sell out a 400-seat theater, and like really trying to discourage me in so many different ways. I was sitting in my hotel room. I was in Egypt with the kids, and I was like, what should I give to myself as a 10-year anniversary, doing magic full-time anniversary thing? So maybe I should take this seriously. I want to really help others to not struggle to make a living. The pandemic sucked in so many ways for all of us, but now I have the opportunity to create something that a lot of people will have value in. So I started writing. I actually started writing the foreword as I was sitting there, and I was like, yeah, this is all the things that I wanted to do, everything that I wanted to know, everything that I wish somebody told me before I started. So I came back from Egypt. I filled my entire room. You can't see it here because this is a podcast, but on one of the sides in my room, I have huge windows, and I filled it with like 100 Post-it notes. And I'm sitting in a big co-office space, so everybody saw it because there's like the stairs is right beside my window, and everybody saw it. They were coming in like, "What are you doing?" Because I have the cameras set up, so everybody knows that I'm a magician, and they see all of these Post-it notes, so they walk in. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to help entertainers to book gigs. And they would give me input like, okay, so what are you thinking about a business plan? What are you thinking about social media? Are you going to cover ChatGPT? Like all of this stuff. Like they would give me ideas too. So it was kind of maybe I should do like a dedication in the book for everybody working here. Because there's a lot of solopreneurs sitting in this co-working space. And just thinking about all of the stuff that I wish I knew, like my why do I do anything, what are my offers, what do I say to people when they reach out, because a lot of people are panicking because they don't even know their own pricing. So a client will call them up and be like, oh hi, I want to book you for this and this thing, and instead of you saying what's your budget, it's much better to say something like, I'll send you a quote afterwards, 'cause then you can actually sit down and have an idea, and you can give them like more value as you're providing this email with everything that they need. And so I just sat down and it was like, okay, so which order do we do this in? So the book is created in 8 different chapters covering each part of this that you need, starting with the most important thing, which is the foundation. So there's going to be the offer foundation, which is everything that you need for your offers. Like you need photos, you need venue shots, you need your bio, your what the MC is supposed to say when you enter a stage, and like all of the stuff that you need. You need to know your pricing. Are you doing charity work? Whatever it is, like sit down and actually nail all of that stuff. And then we move on to the business foundation. That's where we cover your whys and your goals and talk about the SMART goals that stand for different things, the SMART. Was that right? We don't have spelling bees in Sweden. So whenever people like try to like spell a word for me, I stop listening after 2 because I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing this. But yeah, that's how the book is built, because we have to start with what we're offering and then build a foundation of a business. And then we can start thinking about social media and websites and blogs and what is that we want to do. And of course, there's going to be a full chapter of adding value. Because what I see a lot of entertainers do is that they, because for a few years now, I've been consulting for other magicians when it comes to their business. So I have a course for entertainers about this too, where they, during 90 days, can learn everything that they need to know to be able to make 10K months. So it kind of just, started from that idea of this is something that everybody can do if they put their mind to it. But what I've noticed with all of these people that I've coached is that they have a tendency to like race to the bottom for the price. Like they go all the way down as far as they can possibly go down. But one thing I try to teach them is that you never go down in price, you always go up in value. There's a big difference there. So if they say they only have $2,000 to get this thing going or whatever, and you quoted them 3,000, let's say. So instead of you just saying, oh, of course, that's fine, there's always value to be added. And in this case, it's going to be them to provide the value. So let's say they're doing a Christmas party or a conference. There's going to be a photographer there, or there's going to be somebody who is going to be able to take photos and like create something from this. So in that case, if they really don't have the money, and I would like to do it because the venue is cool or the company is cool or whatever it is, I always make sure that they are, like in the contract, it says that they're going to provide me with either video or photos, because that's very valuable to me.
Yeah, that's cool. Going back to what I said before of like you being a strategic thinker and a planner in that, because some people just don't see that. They're like, no, this is my price and this is what it is. Where it's like, if you get like 4 good photos from an event like that, that could be worth like literally infinite amount of, value for you. That's a great example. So saying that again in another way is sometimes you can accommodate their low, because everyone's like, never negotiate your price, know your value. And it's like, yeah, know your value, but that doesn't always mean that, so it's like you on Facebook groups or something, I see like in the performer groups, people are, complaining like, never drop your price. Like, well, sometimes it's worth it to do the show for free, because sometimes you're going to get paid something that's even more valuable than dollars. Do you have any other examples of that?
Like when you do TEDx talks, you're there for free. Like you're never going to be getting any money from a TEDx talk. However, you're going to get an amazing video, if they do it right, amazing video, and the photos are absolutely, spectacular most of the time. The photographers are also there for free, as far as I know, but they are obligated to give you the photos afterwards. And there is one photo that was taken with me on a stage 2019 that I still use all the time. And it's priceless. It's great. It's the first photo you see when you get to my website still. Because it's great, because there's this volunteer and she's holding a cup over her head and she believes that there's water in it, and she had just turned it over and she is so frightened, like she's panicking in her face, and I'm standing next to her smiling so big and it's just a fantastic photo. So, and also now I've done 5 TEDx talks, so I can put that on my LinkedIn. So that gives me so much authority and credibility. So whenever people reach out to me and want me to do like a public speech, or they want me to MC something, and they ask if I have any references, just saying that you're a 5X TEDx speaker says so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. I want to have one TEDx talk on my resume.
What's
I need
holding
to
you
work
back?
on it. You're inspiring me right now. I have no excuses for you. I'm not even going to say, yeah, but I have no excuses. And I am the just go guy. So
Yes,
I
you
need to
are.
get out there and go do it.
Yeah. I'm going to put a calendar thing in a week from now. I'm going to ask you how it's going.
Okay. Well, I might need some guidance. I might need to hire you to consult me on the
You know it. Free consult for everybody right now. If you want to do a TEDx talk, this is how you do it. You go to Google and you search for TEDx near me or just TEDx talks, and you will come to TEDx website, and you'll be able to search for your location where you want to do this. You're in Atlanta right now, so there's going to be a bunch of them happening there. If you are in Stockholm, you'll search for Stockholm. And then it's going to come up a list of every event that's coming up. You will click on one of them that sounds interesting to you. And if they have done the planning right, they should have the organizers listed on the site. And then you can press them. And most of them are smart enough to link their LinkedIn. And you will go to LinkedIn and send a request to connect and say, hi, my name is Caroline Ravn. I just saw that you are organizing TEDx Stockholm or whatever in a few weeks. This is fantastic. I wish you all the best. I work as a professional entertainer. If you ever need anything, please let me know. And I'm excited to follow your journey. Send. It doesn't have to be.
You didn't ask to be on. So that's amazing, because what you didn't do was say, "Hey, are there any spots? Can I be on? Can I do a talk?"
Exactly. Give her the idea or him the idea.
Yeah. That is so key. It's the inception of allowing them, laying things out there and then allowing them to come, it's like allowing people to come to you, that idea of inbound things.
Yeah, absolutely. You can even ask something like ask a question that you want a response to. Like, I see you're hosting TEDx Stockholm. Is this your first time organizing, or have you done anything like this in the past? Or whatever. So then you are starting a conversation. So it all depends on how much you want this thing. If you really want to do it in a couple of months, if that's when it's happening, probably low chances of there being a spot open. Instead, I would then recommend to create some sort of relationship, and even maybe when it comes closer, say something like, oh my God, Samantha, or whatever her name is, I'm so excited for this TEDx event. Is there any chance I can be part of the mingle or anything like that? I would absolutely love to help you make this the most magical or entertaining event so far, or whatever. And because that's when you can start to actually pitch it for you being part of the community. And that's going to make it easier for the next round to make sure you're actually ending up on the stage.
Yeah, I love that. I love those little back ways into things as well. And, I've done that so many times in juggling type world when I was booking more juggling shows, of offering to do something. Yeah, it's like juggling and magic is kind of probably some of the easiest things, because if you're not on the main stage of it, you can be like juggling while people are entering the big event.
Yeah.
And then next year they might be like, oh, that was cool, let's get you up there. But the slowest way to get on the main stage, quote main stage, or the big stage of stuff, is to try so hard to get there by trying to bypass the steps.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of an example for, other creative people. Photography, I guess, is a good one, where you could say hey, can I set up a photo booth at the welcome for all the guests, and they'll leave with a photo. They might already have that. They probably already have that. But if they don't, that would be a way in. And then maybe you get to photograph the main show the next year or something like that. There's always a way that you can wiggle in where you're not being a burden to them. You're actually providing value. And that's it's a fine line, because you don't want to overstep either of being oh, I'll help you do this and this and this. Then they're all right, you're now giving me more work, which I think sometimes people are oh, I'll help you do this thing. And you just gave me, as an event planner, more homework to do to figure out where to put you. So I think that's a key thing that I often think about, because I've had people reach out to me who are oh, can I like specifically in a video, something happened where somebody like reached out and was like, "Oh, can I like follow you along or something to like learn about how you do a video or something, and I'll like help with whatever is needed." And it was like so unspecific that it was actually like just making more work for me. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to like babysit you," where they thought they were kind of being helpful, like, "Oh, I'll come along and help." And I think what would have been more helpful if they were like said something very specific, like you said, like, "Oh, can I do the mingling at the reception or something?" Then they were like, "Oh, you already have this figured out." Like, sure. But if it was like, "Hey, is there something that I can do at your event and help you?"
Yeah.
They're like, "No, I don't really want to like have another. That's another like thing on my to-do list to figure out." So I just thought of that, of like sometimes when people are trying to be helpful to get in, they're actually being more of a burden. So really think about that when you're like trying to be helpful. It's like sometimes you're just in the way of someone trying to do their job.
Yeah. And also, many times they will have like a TEDx after party or even dinner for the entertainers and the speakers. So that could be a great way for you to offer your services too. Like saying something like, after talking to this Samantha girl or whatever a few times back and forth, maybe ask something like, "Oh, I've heard that sometimes they do like a dinner afterwards for all the speakers. Are you planning something like that? If possible, I would like to, what is the word for that? Like show my gratitude for these amazing speakers by offering them my show," or whatever. Because that's another way for the organizer too to feel like they are giving value for the speakers. It's like an extra thing that we're giving them right now. And that's a great way for you to really get your foot into the community. Because that's what people forget about TEDx. It's really a community of people. So most of the people sitting and listening, it's like they're all sitting there and admiring each other, and they're all friends and like patting each other on the back and be like, "It's going to be you next year," because everybody has that same dream. And if you can be part of that community and even maybe offer to help organize something, like some part of it, you're going to be so quickly absorbed, because they're looking for people who are just like us, because they're looking for entertainers, because TED stands for technology, entertainment, and design. We're covering one of the letters in this 3-letter word. So just offering that as a superpower, as one of our coaches says, Barry, he always says that we're all superheroes. And that's something that I try to remember so many times. Like, we are offering something that these people have never seen before. Maybe if you are a seasoned professional entertainer, maybe you can even offer some stage practice for the public speakers. So you can offer them stage training, maybe even give them notes on speaking, give them notes on how to move on a stage, because we've done this a million times. There's so many things that we can do that will not put us on the spotlight, but still make us part of the community.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and it's another thing, you keep giving ideas on how to allow it to be their idea to invite you, where you're doing all of these things. And I think that will be the takeaway even of a lot of this is, what can you do that you're kind of like secretly promoting yourself in a way, and not in a deceptive way, but you're just like, you're making it so that the goal is so that when they think, "Oh, there's one slot that is open. Who is the first person that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about that?" And, again, not about magic or juggling or photography or singer or a drummer. It's literally everything, that is relevant to everyone, no matter what world you're in, particularly entertainers.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got a text from a producer the other day that I did a show for probably in 2016 and haven't done anything with them, since then. And I got a text, and he was like, "Hey, are you still like booking, contracts for this specific act?" And it was just probably because I was like, not because I'm not even promoting that specific thing, but I'm showing up in social media, showing up, talking to entertainers, showing up, being the person. So it was like, if I was like trying to get the gig that he's doing, I was like, there was be no way, but I was top of mind. He was a person. I don't know if I was the first person he reached out to, but I was a person that he reached out to.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool reminder to be like, well, top of mind is the way to get in.
And people hire friends. That's something we have to remember too. Like, if you are nice to these people on LinkedIn, if you're trying to build a relationship, how would you build a relationship with someone. You don't just throw out one connection request or send one email or whatever. You have to nourish this relationship. You have to like their LinkedIn post, comment things, share things. If they're looking for recommendations, give them a recommendation. If you are not the perfect fit for something, offer something else. Like in my case, I do magic. But if I see that they are looking for a kids entertainer, I see they're looking for somebody to paint their house or whatever it is, I always try to be that person, to give them value, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to mean money in my bank account, but it will mean value coming into my pot of relationship with this person, you know? So all of a sudden she's going to be like, oh, I love Caroline. She's amazing. She's always so helpful, or whatever it is. We can talk to her. And that's been one of the ways that I've also started to kind of book other acts too, because I know so many people in the industry now. And I don't do kid shows. I don't do anything outside. I don't do family shows. I don't do balloon animals. I don't do any face paintings, like all of this stuff. I don't do that. But they will call me up and I know exactly who is going to be perfect for this. So another great way of making extra monies as an entertainer.
Yeah.
Just knowing everybody.
One of the challenges I think that a lot of performers, entertainers face is that it starts to become a routine, and this will kind of tie this all up back to on stage. Something that happened with me was it starts to get, I don't want to say boring, but it starts to get routine when you're doing the same thing over and over again. So now we're in our journey of getting booked on tons of shows, and now we have a different problem of, this like kind of feels like I'm going through the motions on stage. Especially, I think it's especially in magic where you have to kind of craft a world, and you're not doing quote real magic, but you have to play into this character.
What are you saying?
We'll bleep that out. Spoiler alert.
Santa is real.
So what is that then? Again, that because I think it ties into all of this. There's mindset of business, mindset of approaching clients, but then there's a really big part of mindset of like being a good entertainer, and that's getting up on stage and acting or allowing the audience to believe that this is the first time that you're experiencing it, even though you do the same thing every day or every show. So how do you get yourself into that mindset? And this will kind of go full circle, going back to like when you were a kid, like when all of us were kids, we were inspired by a magician or a juggler or a singer or whatever it was. And then at some point there's like the magic loses its magic, probably for most of us. But then I think sometimes we reignite that spark of it. So how has that been for you as far as like keeping the quote magic alive in what you're doing instead of going through the motions?
I think you put it very great before when you said that you were so disappointed when you got that first magic book, because then you figure out how it was done. And my recommendation for especially magicians would be to not buy the trick just because it fooled you, because that's not a great way of adding something to your show. Instead, try to read as much magic as you can, watch as much magic as you can, but try to also filter magic in you. Like, what kind of magic do you want to add to your show? So one way for me to constantly feel like I'm enjoying what I'm doing is two things. One, if a trick doesn't inspire me anymore, it's out of the show. I can come back to it later, but it's out of the show. I'm not excited about this. This is not going to be great. It's not going to be great for me, not for the audience. Because if it's not showing that I am having a great time, how can I project that out to? I'm not an actor. I do magic, So if I'm not having a great time, that's going to be seen. Most people in their lifetime, this is what we keep hearing, that most people in their lifetime see one magician. And if I am that one magician, it's my job, my responsibility for not just myself, not just for magicians, but for performance artists of all kind, to put on the best possible show that I ever can. So if I'm not going on to that stage a little bit nervous, a little bit terrified that I might do a shitty job that day, I feel like I'm not prepared. So I have to always constantly remind myself that if I am the person, the only magic show that they see, I have to be focused, I have to be ready, and I have to be inspired. And if I'm not, then might as well, start doing something else. Go back to church and keep preaching or whatever it is that I want to do, or go back to the supermarket and sell stuff, whatever it is. We owe it to magic because it inspired us. As, at least for me, it inspired me when I was a kid, and now at 34, I'm still inspired by it, and hopefully I am all my life. I have a few friends who have retired early, and they're like, "Oh my God, Caroline, when are you going to retire? What's your plan?" And I'm like, "Well, I plan to do shows up until the day before I die because the next day I'm busy." So it's like, that's what I want to do. And if I change my mind later, sure. But
Yeah.
for now, I'm inspired and I want to continue to be.
Yeah, I love that. Just thinking that it's a special moment for that audience, even if you are tired from being on airplanes and all of the nonsense that we went through to get there. That's like that, and people to kind of take that out on the audience and they're angry, and it's like, well, they didn't do because you decided to do this.
Yeah, and there are so many people who are amateurs, hobbyists, up-and-comers that would love the possibility
Yeah.
to do the things that we're doing. There's so many. Just thinking about the few people who get to do cruise ships, for instance. It's hard work. You travel a lot. It's super early hours, and the Uber that didn't show up at 4:30 a.m. and all of this stuff that we have to go through. And then we get there and we check in at 1:30, and you notice that you have a 3:30 technical run, and then you're doing 2 shows that day, and you travel 12 hours to get there. And it's shitty sometimes, and the cabin wasn't cleaned, and whatever it is. And then we have to remember we're not here by accident. Like, we worked our butts off to get here. And there's so many people jealous of us in that moment that we get to do this for a living.
Yeah, I love that. I'll touch in. I'm sure I've said it several times on this show, but I'll add into that. One of the things when I was feeling that moments backstage of just being like, ugh, and I was like dreading it in a way, because your mind just goes off down a spiral, was just looking out into the audience and just seeing individual, like before the show. Because once you're out there, it's like, just blackness. It's hard to like see individual people often. But I would go before the show, look out into that audience, see, and try to like see an individual and just like stop on my eyes, like stop on that individual for a second and go to the next one. And just in my mind, just be like, thank you all for coming. And then just see an individual person, because that would remind you that like there would be a person out there that's like looking and excited, and you're like, oh, this is exciting. I'm just going through the thing that okay, good dudes, do some tricks, but people are out there excited. So really being in that moment and present, I think, is what we're all saying. It's like this is a special moment, even if we're tired or from whatever.
Because life can get tiring too, and shit can happen. Just a few months ago, I was on stage. It was actually right after my dad passed away. So he passed away, and then I think it was 4 days later, I was back on a ship because the show must go on, So I was back on the ship and was doing, I think I was like an hour before the show. I was like, okay, I'm seasick. This is the worst. I cannot do the show today. But in the back of my mind, a performer, I'm like, the show must go on. The show must go on. I get a ginger ale, doesn't help. And then mid-show, because when you do cruise shows, you do 2 shows right after each other. It's the same show, but you do it twice. So mid-show, I'm doing a trick with a wine bucket. And so I have this wine bucket right next to me. And I'm like, do I throw up in or outside of the bucket? Because I need the bucket for the trick. So like all of these ideas running, and I start to sweat. So I just take my jacket off and I throw it on the floor. It was so sweaty. And my friends have seen the show before. They're like, the thing with the jacket, that's new. Let's not keep that in the show. It wasn't great. But I was so sweaty, and I was like, do I throw up now? I just skipped my script and I continued doing the trick. And then after the show, I actually told the entertainment director, I was like, I don't think we should do the second show. But then he gave me a chewy thing, like a ginger chewy thing. And then 2 minutes later, I was fine. But truly, I wasn't seasick. It was just life that had happened. I mean, my dad just passed away. But we continue and we push each other so hard. Like we're constantly being pushed with this idea that the show must go on. And I even have a friend who was doing a show, I think it was the next day after her dad passed away. And she was like, yeah, I can't remember anything. I feel like I was blind for a couple of minutes there because it was so stressful. And we don't take ourselves. I mean, I feel like for me, I take my show super seriously, my business super seriously. And kind of sometimes I forget that I have a personal life too, and things affect me too. So I had my twins. When I was pregnant with the twins, I did shows up until week 34. And the doctors told me to be like laying on a bed from week 25. I was like, no, 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 I have to do the shows. I'll do the shows. I don't remember anything from that show. Uh, and then I did my first show back when the babies were only 3 weeks old, because I was thinking this is the right thing to do. But now in retrospect, I'm like, maybe a little homework for myself is that I have to set the professional Caroline Ravn aside for a minute and just be more Caroline for a second.
Yeah.
Even when we talked about the introduction, who are you? I'm like, forgetting about my kids, forgetting about my personal life. Because I kind of do sometimes, because this is something that I worked so hard for. I worked so hard to be where I'm at today. When we talked just a few years ago, or maybe 6 years ago now that I think of it, so many things have happened.
Yeah.
Like I wrote a book, I got 2 kids, and I've been now doing cruise ships for many years, and I feel like I am in a much higher level of professionalism, and my show is much better than it was before, and I'm way more comfortable on stage. But I'm not sure a lot of things happened to me personally, like my own personal development things. I put them aside, and I think a lot of entertainers are the same. We're just so focused on the thing that we want to be so great at that we forget the rest. Or maybe it's just me. Let me just call my therapist for a second. I've been avoiding her calls, so.
That's what you go on podcasts for with your friends, right?
Oh yeah. So you're asking me for consultation, and I'm.
There we go. So that was amazing. I love both sides of it, that you are helping other entertainers, but you're not just, I think the most valuable thing, if I tie this all up into one thing, is like, you're not just kind of talking the talk and be like, oh, here's some tips for entertainers. As somebody who like they like were struggling or something, and they were like, oh, I need to pivot, or I'm burned out on doing shows, so I'm going to just help other entertainers. And then there's going to be this disconnect of energy of, oh, it doesn't feel like you actually believe this or something like that. So I think what the value that you have is you're actually out doing it and then giving practical advice of like, oh, this is how I did it. So I think that's really, really, really nice. Is there anything else that you'd like in that sense from the stages of helping entertainers improve their business, helping entertainers improve their onstage experience, and then we'll loop it into this, helping entertainers in their quote normal real life? Anything else you would want to add to tie that all up?
I think we have to remember to say yes more often, because a lot of people are afraid of what would happen if you say yes to something that you're not ready for. And I was not ready for my first TEDx talk. I was not ready. I had no idea what I was doing, and the timing for it was terrible. But I said yes, thinking that I can always change my mind later. So that's something that's really going to push you to the next level. So if you say yes to something you're not prepared for, you will. We didn't even have the time to talk about this, but if you feel like you can't do it alone, add somebody to your team. Ask the right people. We have enough friends to do so. The community is so small and so tight, like 2 calls away, and you get to the person that you need.
I love it. So good. So where do you want to send people that want to learn more about either we didn't talk about this either, but you have other resources, the book club, the new book, but where would you like to send people, and what are the upcoming things that you have going on?
Fantastic. Well, I'll send you guys to ravnmagic.com. That's where I have most of my stuff. So that's ravn.com, or ravnmagic.com, sorry, ravnmagic.com. And that's where we have my book, and it's basically a platform where I do a lot of live streams and teaching magicians the business side of show business. I do specifically talk from the perspective of a magician, but I try to be as inclusive as I possibly can. But I usually do one video a week presenting a subject where I can talk about like LinkedIn and TEDx and how to write emails or newsletters or whatever it is. I do that. So that's a paid service, of course, but the book is also going to be on there. My social media is going to be Ravn Magic on basically all the platforms. So, and if you want to book me, that's info@carolineravn.com. So please don't use that one because nobody responds to that one. I'm kidding. I do. But I'm so busy. So I'm kidding. If you do want to book me abroad, I would love to come to Vegas. Now I've said it in a podcast too. And I feel like if I manifest this enough, it'll be a reality.
Amazing.
Also, I want to host the Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh,
so if you know
wow.
anybody, just let me know.
Swing for the fences. There we go.
Of course.
Amazing.
Of course.
Well, thank you
One
so
day.
much for joining again. And yeah, I do believe we could certainly do a part 2 at some point soon and dive into a whole nother realm of stuff. That was amazing. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Sweet. Oh,
Yeah,
there
now I
you
have my
go.
cookie.
I'm still recording, so I'm putting that in.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, we're ending now.